Sorry.
All electronic.
It's pretty brief. Pretty brief. Running around.
Relax. All right, good morning, everyone. It is Tuesday, March 29th. This is the Joint Rules Committee meeting to continue our conversation on the next steps for reopening the State House. So I'm going to just start with following up of a concern that Senator Balint raised about notification at the doors around symptoms. And I did confirm with our Sergeant at Arms that those are up.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Today. They will be up today.
Thank you so much.
Okay. The next question at hand is around our mask policy. And I want to thank all of you. I know we've been having lots of conversations across the chamber with our caucuses and members about next steps. As we know, this has been evolving continually as we more and more about our numbers and case counts. And it is come to my attention that since we last met, which just shows how much this is changing, Washington County has now been labeled a high-risk county for COVID. And so I have been hearing lots of concerns from members and staff about the high risk change from the CDC. So the CDC is saying that if you are in a high risk county that you should be wearing masks. So I know that we have been working hard on this to try to find a balance. And so the compromise that I'd like to put on the table for discussion is that we strongly recommend masks in the building and in committee rooms. We continue to require to wear a mask until the CDC lowers the Washington County threshold away from high. So that, in all of our conversations, I feel like is a strong compromise on how we can take this next step in reopening. And I did ask our clerk to draft that language so we have something to work from and look at. So when the clerk is ready, if she would share that.
Madam Speaker, I'll just forward it to all Joint Rules Committee members so you have it.
Yep.
Well, for those of us who brought a device.
And could you, are you able to share?
I can.
Yeah, that would be great for those watching online.
Yeah, Windsor County went red, and what's the third county? We have 3 counties since we last met that's gone red.
I think
Essex is the other, yeah.
Can members see that I can adjust it so it's larger?
You can make it bigger, that would be great.
As large as possible, please.
Yes, thank you.
Tthanks, Betsy.
Does that
I
seem
do.
okay?
Yeah.
All right, Madam Speaker, would you like me to walk through this?
Yes, please.
So just big picture where you're at right now through under your current policy, masks are required in all legislative spaces. What this would do is revise that existing policy and have masks be strongly recommended in legislative spaces with 2 exceptions. Here in the second paragraph, providing that facial coverings would, aka masks, would still be required in legislative staff.
Betsy, can you scroll it up?
Pardon. Scroll it up, sorry.
Right, because you're looking at the second paragraph.
Oh, sorry, it's not cooperating.
Okay, no problem.
Well, listen, we're happy listeners.
Okay, let me actually. Yeah, I'm gonna just try one thing, Madam Speaker, I'm gonna stop share for a moment. Sorry, let me try it another way. I'll try it on a PDF and maybe that will work better. So one moment.
Thank you.
Thank you. One moment, please. Okay, I'm returning to it.
Would you happy to still speak?
It was okay.
It was okay.
Is that better? We'll try to maximize it.
Again, appreciate that.
All right, thank you. Thanks for your patience. So just to, as I was saying, this would make masks strongly recommended in all legislative spaces with 2 exceptions. The first being that facial coverings would continue to be required in legislative staff office spaces, unless otherwise agreed to by the legislative staff. And secondly, masks would continue to be required in legislative committee rooms during any period of time in which the CDC rates Washington County to be at a high COVID-19 community level, as the county is right now. The policy would go on to say that the strongly recommended facial covering should and required facial covering shall be the same masks that you had right now, AKA essentially no cloth masks. And this policy would maintain the current policy's language about legislative masks need to conform to the chamber's custom of prohibiting crops and debate. Language recommending space being maintained among individuals when masks are not being worn. And the effective date of this policy would be upon its approval by this committee and until otherwise provided by the Rules Committee, and then providing notice of these mask requirements as is currently required under your current policy.
Okay, any specific questions for the clerk about any clarifications before we talk about the policy? Go ahead, Senator.
I just want to clarify to make sure I understand the policy as written. As I've read that, what it says is that wearing a mask in spaces other than committee rooms is at the discretion of the individual, but it is strongly recommended that people wear masks.
That's correct.
In committee rooms, as long as Washington County is in a high risk status as per the CDC, masks are required in committee rooms. Is that my interpretation correct?
Right, and legislative office space.
And legislative office.
Yeah, yeah.
And one other question then, is the exception going forward, the carve out, regardless of whether there is a high risk or low risk, that legislative staff office spaces will be masked unless the legislative staff agrees otherwise?
Correct.
So that's just going forward
That's right.
at all, okay.
Yeah.
And is a legislative committee room considered, this room a legislative committee room?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So regardless of whether Washington County, okay,
Right,
so
when
you're
it drops
lowering it.
below.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
so that we're just tied directly to CDC.
but that's not for legislative staff offices. They will continue to
Unless
be
they-
masked
Correct.
unless they agree to it.
Right.
Okay.
And just, sorry, go ahead.
I want to clarify again, we obviously are changing, assuming that this goes forward, the requirements for visitors to the Capitol complex. And so visitors who are now required to be masked in the hallways and in the chambers will not be required to be masked, but will be strongly encouraged to do so. Is that correct?
Right,
Yes,
but in,
So long as they don't go into committee rooms. If they go into committee
Right.
rooms, then the stricter applies.
So we're not compelled to wear in the Senate chambers, we don't have to wear them.
that's correct.
No session.
That's your discretion, yeah. All right. Any further discussion? We'll just move to general discussion now.
I just have one, so
Sure, go ahead.
as far as the legislative staff office spaces, will we ever revisit that? Like when we become an endemic, or is it going to be forever or
Alright, so-
next session or?
I
just a
think that we're,
sense of-
yeah, I think for now we keep it in place. I think all of this we need to continue to monitor as we work through it.
Okay.
We may get to a spot where there's very, very low transmission. Legislative staff have had conversations. I want to be really clear that I do not want to make any strong changes without their input
Right,
and
right.
support. And so I think for now that's there, but again, all of this is an ongoing conversation. Go ahead.
So I will just say I think probably the change in the transmission, the high case counts in Washington County and other counties in the state has changed some folks' perspectives. And I did hear quite a few members reaching out with feedback and specifically stating the concerns that the transition rate's been high here. And so I think this is a good compromise and will probably make a number of the folks who spoke to me feel better about this.
Okay. Does someone make a motion, Representative McCarthy?
I'll move that we adopt the policy as presented.
I think it just would, for those who don't stay on top of every day of pronouncements from the CDC about which counties are red, I think it would be very helpful at the doors to clarify, have a sign or something that says, you know, what's going on, so members know and visitors know that
What the policy is.
what the policy is exactly. I think that should be very clear to people coming in.
We're getting a thumbs up from the Sergeant at Arms.
Great.
Chief, so we can do that. Senator Brock?
For clarity, it might be useful to make sure that everyone knows that Thursday is the day that CDC makes its weekly announcement as to the status of counties.
That's helpful.
So we plan for that accordingly,
Right.
unless of course they change.
Yes. Go ahead.
I heard some concern expressed from other members over the weekend that if we move to a strongly encouraged policy, just that their hope would be that if you're in a situation, whether it's out in the hall or, you know, in a meeting room someplace, or somebody sitting next to you on in one of the chambers, that somebody asks you, you know, that they would prefer to be masked up, that people are just kind to each other. I think there was some concern about just this becoming personal and blaming and people being afraid to sit next to each other and that kind of thing. And I really hope that we can kind of be our best selves with our colleagues as we make this shift from a mandate to a strongly encouraged.
Yes, I couldn't agree more fully, because we all know colleagues who have spouses, partners, and family members at home who are vulnerable, and who they themselves, because they are fighting some disease or they themselves have something. I think we all need to be sensitive to those colleagues in particular, because the last thing any of us would like to have is an exacerbated health situation in the building with colleagues.
I think it's a good compromise.
All right. Any further discussion before I call the roll? Okay, I'm going to proceed. Senator Mellon.
Yes.
Senator Mazza.
Yes.
Senator Clarkson.
Yes.
Senator Brock.
Yes.
Representative Long.
Yes.
Representative McCarthy.
Yes.
Representative McCoy.
Yes.
And I am a yes. The policy passes and is approved on an 8-0 vote. Thank you very much. This is really helpful. We'll continue to monitor the situation and these changes. We'll make sure to get an announcement out to all members with a policy update, okay? I know that's correct. All right, so again,
So
Thank you.
question,
Yeah.
when are we gonna deal with all the other things we have to deal with?
we'll get another meeting on the books. Not today, but we will get another meeting on the books.
Okay. So I'm just gonna keep this
You
handy.
can keep that handy.
Keep this
All right,
handy.
this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Great